Welcome to Nonprofit CEO Spark, the podcast for bold leaders ready to navigate growth and change with energy and confidence. I'm Marcia Beckner, nonprofit founder, former executive director, and culture strategist with nearly 20 years in the social impact world. Each week, I help nonprofit leaders stop spinning out, set boundaries, and design inclusive cultures where all staff can thrive. If you're ready to reignite your leadership without sacrificing your well-being, hit subscribe and let's spark your next chapter together. If you've ever wondered why some nonprofits build passionate communities around their mission while others struggle just to get attention online, today's conversation is going to be incredibly helpful because building a movement takes more than good intentions. It takes strategy, storytelling, and leadership. Today's guest is someone many of you probably already know if you spend any time thinking about fundraising, storytelling, or digital strategy in the nonprofit world. Julia Campbell is a digital marketing and fundraising expert, consultant, author, and the host of the wonderful podcast, Nonprofit Nation. Through her work, Julia helps nonprofits build vibrant communities around their missions and mobilize people to care, give, and take action. She's also the author of Storytelling in the Digital Age and How to Build and Mobilize a Social Media Community for Your Nonprofit in 90 Days. Julia has this wonderful way of blending practical strategy with honest conversations about leadership, mental health, and what it really takes to grow a movement today. And so I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I love that. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to talk with you. Mm-hmm. And you're such an expert in the world of nonprofit social media, storytelling, and digital strategy, as we were talking about. But I want to dig a little deeper just to start and get to know you some more so our listeners can understand who you are and why you come to this work. So take us back, give us a little context into your background in the nonprofit industry.
I've just always been interested in social justice issues and activism. Mm-hmm. And I grew up really in like the 80s and 90s. And I've just been very interested in sort of the intersection of, government and nonprofits and NGOs and how we can really work together and, make the world a better place. And I call myself, I'm really like just always an optimist despite the moment that we are living in. But I really started my journey when I served in the Peace Corps after college and met a lot of NGOs and worked with a lot of charities and actually did some fundraising for projects that I was working on and really realized that I just had a passion for this kind of work. And I've worked everywhere from universities to really small community-based organizations. And I've in my journey, I find that my talent has really always been bridging marketing and fundraising and figuring out how you can market your mission in kind of an authentic way. And then also, leverage it to connect people with your mission and invite them in to become donors. I just think generosity and philanthropy is one of the most amazing things that people can do. I think it is so interesting in America how it's just kind of built into the fabric of how we built this country is generosity and philanthropy. Mm-hmm. And I really think that it's something that's going to hopefully lead us through some of these dark times that we're in right now.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your background and your passion for this work. I kind of want to start with like community building because, social media is the tactic, but the purpose is to build a community around your specific mission. If you're speaking to a nonprofit CEO, marketing leader, lead fundraiser, executive director, where do they get started in either assessing how they're currently doing with their social media community building efforts and what are also, part two is like, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see organizations making when it comes to building community?
I love that you started out saying social media as a tactic, because I think when people think of social media, they think it is a strategy. in and of itself. And it is a tactic and it's a tool in your tool belt, and you don't have to use it. There's nothing that says you have to. It can just help you connect with brand new audiences and elevate your mission and reach younger demographics. But there's no prescription here that says you have to be on it or you have to be on all the channels. So I really appreciate you saying that. But I think that what we tend to get wrong when we're using it and when I'm talking to leaders about building community is they see platforms as a billboard, and they see it as a place just to promote and to inform people about the work that they're doing and to let people know about their events and to kind of raise awareness around the organization. But when people connect on social media, still the number one reason is to connect with friends and family, but then it's also to learn about new things. So people use social media as a discovery platform and to connect and comment on things that they care about. So that could be causes, that could be, the local school board, which I'm actually on the local school board, and we're very active on social media. As you can imagine, a lot of people are commenting on a lot of things. We're in budget season right now. So people do use it to express themselves, express their views, and connect with like-minded individuals, or to connect with people that they're interested in learning more about around causes that they care about, issues that they care about. So when I see organizations using these platforms simply as a billboard or an information download, or here's a great article about us, here's our annual report, here's our fundraising campaign, but not really connecting people to the mission, to the why of the work, that is probably the number one thing that I see and what I advise leaders to do. So if you're just starting out and building a community, really focus on your vision for what you want the world to be. Focus on answering the question, what would happen if you closed your doors tomorrow? What would be lost in the community? What would be lost in society? For our organizations, they often think, well, we're not a hospital, we're not saving lives. But there's a reason you exist, right? There's a reason, there's a gap that you're filling that government doesn't fill, that the private sector doesn't fill. So what is that gap? Connect your donors and your stakeholders with that gap. And the nonprofits that really succeed on social media do that really well via storytelling, via educational videos, via inspirational posts. They really connect their community with the why and help people understand more about, this is why we do the work and this is what we're hoping to achieve, and this is kind of what success looks like for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And seeing it as more than a billboard or promotional billboard that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard recently that we're in this engagement economy. So it's not just us as the organization promoting to you. How can you get your activists and your community members engaging back? Like, I
Yes.
feel like that is the hardest part because there's so much noise out there and everybody's kind of screaming at you with messages, all thousands and thousands of messages all day long that you field. So how is there a strategy that you can get people engaging back with you, making comments, sharing? Like, how do you get that going?
Well, people can smell kind of inauthentic engagement tactics a mile away. So if you're simply asking a question just to ask it and to get comments and to get reach,
Mhm.
it's interesting that people that don't even know anything about marketing, they can see that and they're see through it. So as authentic and vulnerable as you can be with your stories and your storytelling and the information that you're sharing, that is going to help people comment. I mean, they're going to comment, they're going to share, they're going to say, oh, I went through this too, or my sister went through this, or, oh, this program helped my son, or, we adopted a cat from this shelter and it was fantastic. Just being in people's feed, sharing exactly what you do every single day. You don't have to share names and faces. You could just share a little bit about the mission, an anecdote or a mission moment from your perspective. People like to also connect with humans on social media. So, I know that a lot of nonprofits And I was one of these when I was a development director. We just want to put our head down and do our work. And we don't want to be on video and we don't want to be creating this kind of content. And we just want to do our work and hopefully it will reach people. But in, like you said, the engagement economy, the attention economy we're living in, people want to see faces and they want to see humans and they want to see behind the scenes and they want to see unfiltered what we're doing. It doesn't have to be perfectly polished and edited. It doesn't have to even have music attached to it. I've seen a lot of videos online from nonprofits that get a lot of comments where it's the executive director just going on a walk and talking about the issue, talking about something, or a development director or program director talking about a story of something that happened in the program that day and what it meant to them. And building a community is really about understanding what the community needs and what the community wants from you. And we tend to focus so much on our agendas and what we want to convey and what we want to share. And we do have a lot of important information to share, but how can we sort of make it create the content in a way that our community is going to respond to,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes
I
sense.
It does. I love what you just said and I want to underscore it. So how I feel like how you could really improve your community building slash social media tactic is what you just said is a raw, vulnerable video of an executive director, development director going on a little walk outside your location and just sharing. We just had someone come in today, and it was a foster child was meeting with their parent, and this was the interaction and how our program manager really navigated the situation. This is why we exist. I
Yes.
mean, imagine if you and this is free, free
Yeah.
for nonprofits, right? Just try something, try the video. I'm scared of video myself. So
Mhm.
I'm so like resistant to video myself. So I get it, why people are resistant to video, but unpolished, authentic, vulnerable, raw, what you just said is just like something that someone can do tomorrow that's listening to this podcast episode today, and they can try it and just see the engagement that you get and pilot this strategy for a week or a month,
Mhm.
and just see. You can have a board member talk, or you could really engage a donor like, this is why I gave, really like 30 seconds, and this is your social media content and it costs
Mhm.
nothing.
Mhm.
And then you're
Absolutely.
building that community and you're humanizing that your cause. And it's
Exactly.
right. Oh my gosh, I love this as a tactic people can try tomorrow.
I know in COVID, I started following this organization called Amira Incorporated, and they help survivors of sex trafficking and sexual exploitation, specifically in New England, where I live. First of all, I did not know that was happening around here. I think I was very naive. And I started watching their videos, which was the executive director, alone in her house or in her backyard or taking a walk, just sort of saying, here are like three myths that I hear all the time about sexual exploitation. Here are 5 ways to help. Here's a question that I just got from a donor. And then sometimes just reflecting on the state of the world or reflecting on the issue. It was really interesting. And so I started following them. That was when Instagram stories is still really popular, but it was before reels. So stories were really those quick little short videos. And I would follow it every day and I just learned so much, but I also felt very connected to the organization in a way that I hadn't before, because a lot of nonprofits there that we're always thinking in terms of promotional content. Like, how can we promote ourselves? How can we get ourselves out there? How can we cut through the clutter? But the way to do that is just to be vulnerable and authentic. And that's like our superpower. I think
Mhm.
nonprofits have that over brands every single
Totally.
day.
Yeah. Is there any research that says that like video content is better than static images and just text, or do you know anything about that?
Well, I think it depends on the platform. So Video is the number one type of content across platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. But then there are some platforms that don't support video, like Threads, Blue Sky. Like, I think it depends on the platform and what you're trying to achieve. But that brings me also to another point I wanted to make, is that you really have to understand the platform that you're on and understand the kind of content that works really well on that platform. So it might work better for a smaller organization that doesn't have a lot of capacity to be on fewer platforms, but kind of dive deeper.
Hmm.
So, on Facebook, video, stories, reels, same with Instagram, video, stories, and reels. That's really the content that works well. A great static photo does work really well on Instagram. Photos and videos work really well on LinkedIn. Visual content is kind of the key. And what I will say is non AI generated visual content and video content, because the algorithms are starting to see how much AI generated content is out there.
Hmm.
And for nonprofits, our really last best competitive advantage is our stories and our authentic storytelling and our being human. So as much as you can do that, I
Hmm.
think that works really, really well. So avoiding any AI generated imagery or videos and just sharing what you have using your phone, using your face or someone else's face, that works really well.
Yeah. And so, where do you see AI as either benefiting or hurting nonprofits who are building communities?
I see it as I see it as an almost like if you hired an intern to help you generate ideas, to help you do research, to help you create maybe a content calendar, to help you synthesize really long, dense pieces of information into maybe more shorter social media posts. So when I look at, like, I use Chat GPT, although I'm thinking of maybe moving to Claude for a variety of reasons. But I look at it as my brainstorming partner and almost like my reality check. So I will create, I'll write a blog post or I'll have a podcast episode and I will ask it to create a series of like LinkedIn posts. And then I'll say, that doesn't sound like me, or that really sounds like ChatGPT wrote it. Like, check yourself, and they will. And it's just very interesting. So
Huh.
I also see AI as our partner in sort of analyzing data, so we can really analyze um, our social media data. If you can upload it into a generative AI tool and look at trends and look at you're going to have to probably go to each platform to do this unless you pay for something like a Sprout Social or a HubSpot or Salesforce. But it can help you identify trends, and it can also help you sort of predict which posts are going to work best based on past data. So we can almost use it as our like data analysis
Mm.
friend or intern.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. We're always wanting more interns. So this is,
Exactly. So my latest AI tool that I absolutely hate is in Gmail,
mhm.
how it will auto write a response. And I don't know really how to turn it off, so I have to figure out how to turn it off, because I don't like that. Like, okay, sometimes I want some generic response to some of the emails that I get, but I always want to write it myself. I want to sound like myself. I don't think it takes a lot of time to write an email response.
Mhm.
But just making sure that at the end of the day, the content still feels really like you. Certainly, like if you're working from a blank page and you're out of ideas, and saying, okay, what are 5 posts that I could share on Instagram that would help convey the importance of domestic violence prevention in our community?
Mm. Mhm.
Um, Brainstorming is such a great way to use it, but copy and pasting and letting it do all the writing, I would never do that. And that's what I do think a lot of people do. We see it all over. I'm sure you see it on LinkedIn. Um, and you can kind of spot it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just continues to keep changing so fast.
It does. Oh, and I had one other thing. I don't think that all AI video tools are bad. In fact, I think if you're using your content, AI tools are fabulous for like making a montage of your gala photos and making a video of it and adding sound, adding music and adding sound to it, making it better, making it tighter. I also think AI for something like what we're doing now, we have this video of the podcast that, I don't really use video on my podcast. I know you're not using video, but I know a lot of podcasts, they use AI tools to help identify clips
Mhm.
that they can then further edit or identify. So that it's definitely a time saver in those kinds of ways. But when AI is 100% generating the video and the image, I think there's all sorts of ethical questions around this. I did attend a conference last year, the AFP New England conference, and there was an entire discussion around, well, is it ethical to share client stories, or is it more ethical to share a fake story of a fake person that makes, sort of an amalgamation or an avatar of all the stories? It's a really interesting discussion.
Oh, that
I
isn't.
fall on the side of a real story every time, but
Yeah, and protect their identity.
exactly.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, nonprofits legitimately have so many, authentic, real stories. And if you just, need to protect the identity of the people you're serving, that makes sense. And you could, I think, change the name and that's fine. Um, Now, I always am going to bend what our conversation into nonprofit culture. That's my
Yes.
thing, is that while we're doing this work, that people are healthy and happy working for this mission, for this cause, for your organization, for in your team, because I think you get the most effective, performance results as well as just health and well-being for all involved. So, my question for you is that social media teams in nonprofits or marketing fundraising teams are expected to be, quote, always on. What have you seen happen to staff well being when organizations treat digital engagement as a 24/7 responsibility?
I think that it's impossible to do so if you're a very small organization. If you're the Red Cross, I do think someone should probably be monitoring the inbox,
Mhm.
or monitoring the comments, just making sure they're not going off the rails. If you're a national or international organization, hopefully you have the budget to actually have people take shifts.
Mhm.
If you're a small organization, I really don't think that it's our responsibility to be monitoring our Facebook page 24 hours a day. And I also think it's really important to take social media breaks and take like digital detoxes, because sometimes what I see, and it doesn't matter what your mission is, there's going to be trolls, there will be harassment, there will be negativity, there will be people talking about something that's completely unrelated to your mission. So I think as long as you have a community, sort of a monitoring strategy, I don't think that you do need to be on 24/7. And I think it's completely unrealistic, like you said.
Julia, great storytelling is central to your work, but storytelling requires trust and vulnerability from staff and program teams. We were just talking about AI and how your recommendation is to not use it for to create videos and images that are inauthentic, but to use it more as a back end, fundraising, or I'm sorry, not fundraising, a back end, organization slash brainstorming tool. So let's talk about trust, because when it comes to social media or any media in that case, trust, we're in this trust recession right now, and it seems to only be getting worse, like what's real and what's not real online. So tell me how you think about building trust as a nonprofit leader.
I think the trust recession actually presents an opportunity for nonprofits to position themselves as go-to experts and really knowledgeable thought leaders in the spaces that they're operating in. So often you're right. People don't trust mainstream media. People don't trust what they see. People don't trust things on YouTube. And I think people are right to be skeptical of those sources. But I do think nonprofits really have the responsibility to be sharing factual information and to be sharing the stories of what's going on the ground. So I'm thinking of Invisible People with Mark Horvath. That's one of my favorite organizations. And they just go out and talk to people who are experiencing homelessness. They go talk to activists, they go talk to city councilors, and they share these videos that are kind of unfiltered, of course, with permission. They have an entire way that they do this. But those videos are really just exposing, the actual reality of what's going on in some of the cities. They're helping try to figure out solutions, and they're sharing information for people like me who really are concerned about that topic and concerned about homelessness. So for nonprofits, I really believe like us sharing even just a mission moment or a little bit of a fact or a statistic, addressing a myth or a misconception, that's going to help us really build that trust that we know what we're talking about. We're walking the walk. We are an established leader in the space. And that's also going to really attract like press sources to talk to us. I know that Mark Horvath, who's the ED of Invisible People, he's always in the news because the press, they find him, they find his group, and they know he's going to be candid, and they know he's going to really talk about what's going on, and he's not going to sugarcoat it. And he's going to be really honest and really informative. So as much as we can do that, I do think that's going to help attract press, that's going to attract donors to us because they're going to see that we are really talking about the issue that they care about in a way that is honest and informative.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And looking ahead now, what do nonprofit leaders most need to understand about the relationship between digital engagement, staff well-being, and sustainable organizational culture?
That is such a fantastic question. I see way too often nonprofits simply piling on digital, quote unquote, or social media, quote unquote, onto an already full plate. So when I was a development director, I then became marketing director, more probably because I was more interested in marketing. I love marketing. And then that's right when Facebook pages started to become a thing. Twitter was all the rage. Instagram was sort of coming up, and LinkedIn was popular. And my executive director said to me, okay, why don't you just manage digital as well? And I said, well, I'm already a full-time development director and I'm doing the marketing. So piling on this job, I think helping leaders understand that managing digital is not optional, but it's also not something that should just be piled onto someone's already full plate. It can't just be tacked on to a job responsibility. It can't just be sort of I see it all the time, assigned to a volunteer that may or may not be doing it very consistently, that might leave, and then you don't have the logins and you don't have the passwords and you don't have the access to the pages and the accounts. So what I see is I would love to create a more embraced culture around digital at nonprofits, like really respecting it as a job that is intentional and meaningful and as part of the mission. So
Mhm.
I see digital and I see marketing and fundraising all as part of the mission. So changing this culture where it's sort of like, oh no, you just go off and do that by yourself and we're going to go do the real work over here. I think working together, understanding that marketing is everyone's job. Digital, we all need to be contributing to it, to whether it's stories or visuals, whether it's comments or whether it's just giving feedback on what's being created. I would love to see more of a collaborative culture around all of those things, all those three things you listed.
Yeah. And kind of going back to the beginning of this episode is remembering it's all about building an engaged community
Right.
around you to move the mission forward.
Exactly. And these people are not all going to be donors. They're not all going to be major donors. They're not all going to be monthly donors. Some of them might be volunteers, some of them might be clients, some of them might be alumni of your program, some of them might just be community members who are interested in your program. So let's build this community of all these like-minded people. Seth Godin has a great quote: people like us do things like this. People like us do things like this. Like, this is what we do.
Mhm.
And this is who we are. And this is part of our identity. And this is what we care about. And we all want to accomplish this mission together.
Yeah. Well, Julia, thank you so much for
Mm.
your time. You have dropped so much gold and a way to think about social media intersecting with AI, building sustainable cultures that are 24/7. Even if you have, social media is 24/7, but you as a human are not 24/7. I just want to
Exactly.
really reiterate that there needs to be a break. And also, I know that you're speaking at the Association for Fundraising Professionals International Conference
Mhm.
called ICON at the end of April in 2026.
Mhm.
What is your session about?
It's called Mastering Short Form Video for Long-Term Donor Engagement. So it's going to be
Hmm.
talking all about the things we talked about today: how to build trust with short form video, how to create educational content, how to do fundraising, how to build a community using short form video.
Wow. Okay. So if you press play on this podcast episode with Julia and you're going to the AFP, Association for Fundraising Professionals conference in San Diego in April, you have got to go to her session. It's just a
Yes.
perfect follow on. And I also want to tell people about your amazing podcast called
Oh, thank you.
Nonprofit Nation. So please go find that on Apple, Spotify, all your favorite platforms. Julia, where else can they find you
Mhm.
and any other resources you want to offer?
Sure. Yeah, I'm so happy. But I was happy to have you on the podcast too, and it's just been such a great resource for me and a great networking opportunity. I just love the podcast. So check that out. If you go to my website, jcsocialmarketing.com, that's where you'll find my blog and all my courses. And I do have a workbook if you're just getting started with digital storytelling. So that's jcsocialmarketing.com/workbook.
Great. We'll put all of that in the show notes so that you can reach out to Julia or see her session at the next conference. And Julia, thank you again so much for making the time to be with us.
Oh, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Nonprofit CEO Spark. If you're ready to turn burnout into boundaries and build a healthy, happy culture where everyone, including you, can thrive, visit culturecares.com to learn how I support nonprofit organizations like yours. If this episode brought you value, share it with a fellow leader navigating stress and overwhelm. And remember, you are meant for great things, and you don't have to burn out to prove it. Until next time, keep leading with courage and confidence.